Hello, everyone, and welcome to another, but my first, virtual Meet the Festival, reuniting cast members from our current video series of Stratford Festival films. I am Beck Lloyd. I'm a 2020 company member, I guess I'll call myself, as well as a very recent Birmingham Conservatory grad, and I will be your moderator today, relaying audience questions, posing your questions to our actors from the 2015 production of Hamlet, the film of which is now streaming free of charge. Here with us today, we have two actors with a riveting connection to the titular character. Playing Hamlet in the festival's 2015 production, Jonathan Goad. Good morning, hi. Jonathan is an alum of the Birmingham Conservatory program, and in 2015, the year of conversation today, he also played Face in The Alchemist, and after 15 seasons with the company, most recently, you would have seen Jonathan in the 2019 production of King Henry VIII as King Henry VIII, directed by Martha Henry. And you also directed The Crucible, with many other Stratford credits. Let's not forget the musicals, too, which was a fun list to go through. And we also have our 2020 Hamlet. We await with gorgeous anticipation. Yay. Welcome, Amaka Ume. Amalka also trained with the Birmingham Conservatory this past fall, actually. We got to do that together. But was working the verse before she arrived in Shakespeare in Hyde Park's 2018 Romeo and Juliet as Samson, and Hermia in A Midsummer Night's Dream, as well as Ariel a little before that in The Tempest at Harthouse. And for those who do not know, this would have been Amaka's first season with the festival. Amaka was cast to play Hamlet this 2020 season. And I know her, she's a deep diver. So despite not having the opportunity to bring the role to stage yet, she without a doubt has some brilliant insights into the complexities of this story and the experience of this character in particular. Yes, we're very excited. Garen Wynne Davies, who has his own wonderful conversation outlet, I found yesterday, In Good Company. There are some fabulous episodes on YouTube. I admit I was procrastinating a little bit yesterday.
Well, you know, it's good to have Amaka here because she's the person who read Hamlet the most recently. So it'll be good to have help on the conversation.
Yes, that's awesome. So in 2019, Gary, you were playing Falstaff in Merry Wives, and you made me laugh as Elliot Chase, working with Sophia Walker and Lucy Peacock and Mike Scher in Private Lives. Back in 2015, you were playing Claudius in Hamlet, of course, and you were also in The Physicist. Over your time with the festival, you've played Pericles, Julius Caesar, Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Cymbeline in 2012, the list goes on. And here we are chatting in 2020.
Brilliant.
And last but not least, Sanjay Talwar, it's lovely to have you here. Sanjay was with the festival for 6 seasons in 2015, playing in The Taming of the Shrew, as well as Rosencrantz in today's up for discussion Hamlet. Sanjay's time with the festival included roles as Touchstone in 2016, that's As You Like It, Tweedledee in 2014's Alice Through the Looking Glass, Orsino in 2006, the production of Twelfth Night. My dates, I'm noticing now, are going backwards because that was the direction of my research page. And for those, again, who do not know, Sanjay's had 5 seasons as artistic director of Shakespeare in the Rough, a company that came together in 2012, and in their words, strive towards the seamless integration of outdoor theater, education, and community building. So thank you, it's awesome to have you here. I'm so excited to get started today. I have to say, what struck me most while watching the film, which I have watched 3 times now, that's 9 hours.
Wow.
But I couldn't stop, I couldn't. I sat down, you know, with my pen and paper, ready to study, ready to make my notes and get ready for this. But my book and my pen went down pretty quick because I was absolutely enthralled. And it hit me. I think it really hit me with Adrienne Gould's performance, beautiful performance as Ophelia, that this is grief. And I sat there thinking, is this a grief play and not a madness play like my high school English teacher told me? Madness, a word that has such heavy connotation. And watching, I knew it was grief because we are uniquely surrounded by images of uncontrollable grief right now, not madness, I would say. So that's what it dug out of me. But I'm excited to have an hour to ask questions. I think it was Anthony who said this is a play which questions are asked more often than they are answered. But today we get to answer some. So let's get started. As is tradition, today we have people from New York watching, Indiana, Maine, Ohio, Florida, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Hong Kong, and Germany. So hello to all of those people.
Hello to the world.
Hello to the world. Okay, jumping right in. We've got a question for both Jonathan and Amaka. How was your preparation? So preparation and performance, it says. Prep, obviously, Amaka. Performance coming. How was your preparation and performance influenced by previous Hamlets, both at the festival and elsewhere?
Great question. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I kind of I really refrained from watching other Hamlets. I know, it's a really well-known play, but I'm kind of a spongy person, like incredibly impressionable, and I think with all of the pressure, all of the incoming pressure, I really wanted to see what it might be like to imagine myself originating the role, because here at least I am the first Black person to play the role, and I think that is entirely different from being a white man playing the role. So I kind of wanted to make it my own. I did look at a few performances here and there, and that's also really inspiring, because part of what that gave me was a sense that it is possible. Being kind of doing it myself for the first time, it's daunting. It's an incredibly challenging, mammoth task, and I think I was struggling with some fears that, like, nobody can do this. Like, this is an incredibly gymnastic, athletic task. But I'm thankful that the only one I watched in entirety is yours, Jonathan, and I was like, oh my goodness, yes, like, it's real. Like, it can be done, and so beautifully and so effectively and so powerfully. So
Yeah. It's sort of a unique situation for you two, to be able to pass each other eating lunch while having lived in this same world. Jonathan, did you want to answer that? Have an answer to that question?
I mean, I came to the role a little bit later, probably later than I would have, than I would have liked to. I don't mean because I was craving all that time, but I just mean, when it finally presented an opportunity, I think I was close to 40. So, I was, I inevitably had seen Hamlets. But I'm also, I mean, I just personally, I'm happy to see whatever I can. I'm also happy to beg, borrow, and steal from those before me. That said, knowing that really when you enact any role, you'll never really be imitating. You may, with any of these sort of great roles, or maybe any role, but particularly great roles, I personally need all the help I can get. So if I saw something in a Hamlet, no matter where it was on film or when I was 17, that I think is something it's worth exploring for myself, then I'll go there. And I was lucky to have seen, I think in my second year at the festival, Paul Gross did a Hamlet here, and he was a powerful and lovely Hamlet. Ben Carlson did a Hamlet, which was fantastic, and I learned a great deal there. But I must say that it was probably seeing Hamlet in the park up in Aurora with Graham Abbey that was sort of my greatest inspiration to desire to play the role, because I actually didn't really crave it. I always thought myself as far more of a Mackers or maybe a Coriolanus. That was kind of where I felt that was my life energy.
Yeah.
And then I saw Graham played in the park, and it was in a very scaled back production, as you can imagine. I will say, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, his own father had only died a couple of months earlier, and clearly he was tapping a very powerful vein for himself there. but also to do it, you know, he was outside with nothing. And the play itself spoke to me in a way it hadn't. And that's no discredit to any performance I'd seen before, but maybe I was in the right place to receive it. So more than anything, it was seeing that production that made me say, if this thing ever comes along, I'm going to jump on it. Because otherwise I'd actually turned down doing a production here 10 years earlier. It was a production that was going to be shared by 6 actors, which was not the problem. For me, the problem was the rehearsal schedule they had arranged was impossible. You know, it just wouldn't make for a proper rehearsal period for something as mammoth as Hamlet. So I turned it down and thought, oh, it's gone. You know, that probably will never come along again. And then very fortunately for me, it did.
Did either of you give your Hamlet an age, a specific age? How old was?
My age, I think works fine for Hamlet. There's also this weird like time stretchy warpy thing that happens in that play. It's kind of bizarre. It's like, when do I start? Like, do I start at 23 and then by the end I'm 30, 33? What? Yeah, so that kind of allows for a bit of flexibility. I also want to mention, I have to shout out the Prince Hamlet adaptation that was done by Why Not Theatre with Christine Horn. I also saw that one. I lied, but that's the one I've seen live, and that was, oh my goodness, yeah, incredible. So I had to mention that. Shout out to y'all. But yeah.
Back when I played it in Wales and in England. And when I played it, I made him 2 different ages, kind of. He was intellectually one age and emotionally another.
Oh, I love that.
So there was a kind of, I kept on playing with that idea.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that what I did was I used to meet, I'm going to name drop, I used to meet Ian McKellen at Waterloo Station and pick his brains on how to play the part. And I basically played everything he said that I could remember before the second pint of beer was gone. So it was all good.
I also back in university had a poster of Sir Laurence Olivier holding the skull with a big floppy hat, and it was right above my bed. And I picked it up at the poster bazaar that they have. I don't know if they still have them at university, but they used to, one day during Frosh Week, you go in and there'd be posters everywhere. You could buy them. I'd never seen a Hamlet at that point, but I sort of, and I wasn't into theater. I was into theater, but I was not in an acting program. I was in social work, but funny enough, I sort of probably pretentiously put that above my bed, and I stared at him every night before I went to bed. That's not a fantasy thing. But I must have been, I think probably on some level, there was something unconscious happening.
I saw that in your performance, Johnny.
You did? When I put a floppy hat for a moment.
I saw it. It was always behind
held it.
Yeah. Okay, fabulous. We have a question for all the actors. Pat would like to know how all the actors address the challenge of speaking iconic phrases that are so familiar to many. This is awesome because I was definitely saying words out loud in the privacy of my living room watching Hamlet, and I do keep my mouth closed in the festival while I'm watching. So, what is it like to speak those iconic phrases? Sanjay, do you want to get us started?
Sure. I mean, for Rosencrantz, I don't know that too many of his lines would qualify as iconic, but I think I'm not going to put you on the spot, Johnny, and say name 3 of them.
You made them iconic.
But I think it's fundamentally it's like any other acting moment. You have to find the truth of the situation, the truth of the moment, the truth of what you're trying to communicate, and take let that critic part of you worry about, I'm saying a line that sort of has reverberations throughout the history of the last 400 years of theater. So I think it really is about trying to stay in a moment and play the scene.
Yeah,
that's an excellent answer. And that your job as an actor is first and foremost always to be present. And so if you're thinking about the import and the history and even evaluating your own interpretation of something, then you're kind of already, you've got one foot in dead water, I think. You know, I mean, for me too, I just feel that anyone that's evaluating it, you know, critically or however, saying, well, he said the line this way. Well, hopefully the line was said that way that night, but that's not what you're married to. That's just my, I mean, you have to work devilishly hard on all of Shakespeare to make sure that you are illuminating the line to its to great potential, but not necessarily. I mean, there's just simply there is no final answer, and
there's no one way to do it anyhow.
No,
there's absolutely
I was tonight. Yeah.
Fortunately, I played Hamlet, I played the Polonius and Claudius and the Ghost. And what's interesting when you're playing one of the other parts, you hear, like, for example, hearing Hamlet with Johnny, you'd hear the line, you'd go, oh, beautiful, beautiful, because it just spun slightly differently or something like that. And with Tommy Rooney playing Polonius, when we did this version, the Jonathan, myself, and Sanjay, then you'd hear wonderful things from Polonius. And so there's freshness all around. And I think that actually, as many times as Maka could see another Hamlet or not, or it's going to be fresh no matter what. You're never going to do it that person's way, or it's going to live in you every single time.
Yeah, or even the way you once did it. You know?
Not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the moment you know, if you are trying to repeat yourself, you know,
yeah, I did it right.
You know, and because again, first and foremost, you must actually sacrifice any of your own cleverness for spontaneity, for as Sanjay first said, you know, that the thing must be present, and it must emerge from your body, hopefully, as a response to something that has just preceded it. That's where the line comes from. It's a hard.
I just want to say, I was touring it at one point in England, and we were playing Oxford, and the one line that I remember more than any other, I said, "Now might I do it, Pat?" And someone in the back said, "Who's Pat?"
Oh yeah.
There you go. Oh, come on. That's ready. So, you know, there's freshness all around.
Yeah, I love the piece of advice, go before you're ready. You know, don't give yourself time to I was struggling with this a lot in rehearsal. Peter had to be like, stopping, because I was like, no, the words would come out of my mouth and I'm like, it stinks of fame. Like, I feel, how do you get over this? But yeah, repetition. And like you all have said, don't sit in that. Don't be like, it's gonna be
the the answer also is not to throw it away, because
not to throw it away.
You know,
but yeah, just go with the action and make it land. I guess send it out to the place that you're intending, and watch it get there. Yeah. Also, I crave maybe because theater is something like ministry. To me, I see a lot of parallels having grown up in the church. I feel like I kind of want that. And a play this well known, I feel like I'm gonna hear people say the lines to me or finish lines for me before I can get to them. And I think that would be really exciting.
All in response. That would be awesome in a play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be or
everyone's like, no, no, and I'm like, that's the question.
I used to say, though, that the name of my autobiography would be "To Be or Not to Squirrel."
Can't wait.
We have this is really exciting. We have a lot of longtime audience members tuning in today. We have Martha and her mother Rusty, who's 90 and has been coming to the Stratford Festival since its first season.
Whoa, hi guys.
Wow.
Say hi to them, absolutely.
Thank you.
We also have Robert Johnson watching, who's been coming since 1953. So hello to Robert as well.
Hello, Robert.
Robert, amazing.
We're also getting questions. This is exciting. How does preparation, so this is open to anyone who would like to answer, how does preparation for a role in a Shakespearean comedy differ from preparing for a role in a tragedy or a part in a musical, especially in a repertory company like the Stratford Festival? So,
well, I'll just say that one thing about comedy and musicals that I found is that there are more set pieces, and in a set piece you have to, like anything else, you are choreographed. You need that feed in order to for the other person to get the laugh, etc. So there are more set pieces in the Hamlets and Coriolanus's and the Cymbeline and all those things. That you have different. You don't have that. You have more of your own story to share with somebody else and the response kind of thing. But that's the difference that I find, is just that there are more set pieces in a comedy or a musical. That's what I find.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, both as an actor and director, you're always trying to, for me, this is my own theory, is that you're always looking for where chaos can reign. But as Gary just said quite aptly, that in certain every play has its own kind of parameters of what chaos could be permitted. And of course, from choreography in a musical and songs to sort of the structure of jokes and the structure of the way it has been choreographed through writing in comedy, you sort of play within tighter parameters, I suppose you could say. But in essence, for me, you're still always trying to seek where freedom can be maximized, but that each
probably.
Sorry,
Johnny, I was just thinking there are probably more signposts in those shows. Maybe that's what it is. And as much freedom in the middle of them all.
That's right. Yeah.
You've just got more places you have to be. And then, whoa, then chaos.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Amaka or Sanjay, did you want to touch on that? I've got tons of questions if you want to ask, I can ask a new one. Okay. We've got a question for Gare. 2 questions, actually.
No and maybe.
No. Oh, I like it.
Are you wearing pants?
I'll just write them back now. Can you speak about the choice to be drinking while in the chapel praying? So this is the scene where Hamlet's right behind you. He could end your life. You've got that cup underneath your chest that you can't necessarily see until you come back up.
It was all searching. It was all searching for flaws. It was looking for flaws. And the one thing, having played Claudius and the Ghost in that same production, one thing I would do differently, we were looking for ways to make them different. I would now, if I was go back, I would make ways to make them exactly the same, to make Hamlet's decision on what's the difference between this, Hyperion to the satyr, would make them exactly the same. I made that mistake. But for Claudius and in the chapel, the idea of going to somewhere sacred and drinking is the idea of that man cannot find the forgiveness of the cross is not a cross to him because he cannot find the truth in it. He cannot find his truth in it. So that's the idea. Why the drinking was there was for that. And then Johnny comes in with a long rifle at the back of his head. It was actually quite an interesting visual. The drink, the rifle, the cross. It just felt that I didn't want to get too comfortable with his forgiveness from someone else or himself. That's what it was.
Yeah, it adds so much tension in that scene, or this moment of, Hamlet left him alive because he was praying, but here he was drinking. I had like a jaw drop moment on.
Well, it was also that his self-assurance isn't it's not as strong as we might think. That there's more vulnerability and things like that.
Yeah, and when you say make those characters the same, the Ghost and Claudius, do you mean physically? Like you wouldn't have?
No. In basically they could be the same. Yeah. So we put on a big beard and stuff. I would make them almost the same, almost twins and stuff like that. And it's just the personalities and the way that sorry, I'm not speaking for Johnny. I'm talking about these 2 guys. The way that he sees them is the difference.
Yeah.
But they are actually that's what they look like.
Mm-hmm. Someone would like to know what those quick changes were like, though.
Well, I'll tell you, that's
what's going on with the beard and the.
That's when the backstage of places like Stratford and every theater, but Stratford has a magnificent set of individuals who make these things happen. And the first part of the play, it seems, I don't think Shakespeare intended for the same guy to play them because you're sort of one door and right back in the other. interesting. There was a lot of running around, and you're trying to be, you're going, Hamlet, Hamlet, what are you doing? But you're actually going. So it sounded like a puppy going to a vet. They were difficult. They were fun.
Yeah, it looked like it. All right, fabulous. We have a question. This is from Jeff Scott, and he's wondering why, after teasing Polonius for half the play, Hamlet then tells the players not to mock him and weeps at his death. So that's our question from Jeff Scott. Why, after teasing Polonius for half the play, Hamlet then tells the players not to mock him and weeps at his death?
I think it's a big question. But from what I can sort of recall of our general approach to that is, or at least how I felt, is that I don't, Polonius is the father of the woman that Hamlet is desperately, sincerely, and deeply in love with. I don't think Hamlet can bring himself to hate Polonius, maybe like the same kind of vein of hate that he feels for Claudius. But he does see him as complicit, as co-conspiratorial, as somehow, so, pardon me, my phone.
That's Polonius on the phone.
And I think ultimately, and I think that sort of seems to be universal anyway in a Polonius, that he is not a sinister character, and I think Hamlet, being highly humanly intuitive, knows that. But at the same time, Polonius makes him fiercely frustrated, disappointed, and a little bit angry. But I think in the end, he recognizes him as a genuine soul. He is part of the parental unit that brought Ophelia into the world, who he virtually treats as I think it is a love story as deep and rich as Romeo and Juliet or any other great love that you can imagine. So I don't think the two things are necessarily somehow in opposition. I just think that I don't know if that suffices as an answer, but.
And I think this is what I interpreted from the production, and I think you mentioned this in the chat with Amaka, the pre-show that you did, that Ophelia was pregnant. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
In that production. Yeah.
In that production. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I interpreted from that production as I was watching. And so that makes them family.
Yeah. I'll just say this too, that, absolutely. And that's, in a better scenario, one that wasn't corrupted by Claudius, that Polonius might, he was a yes man, and he's a man, and we see it all the time in politics now, people that have to compromise their own moral their own moral center for a corrupt leader. But that's why I think Hamlet on some level understands that about Polonius, and I sometimes there's a bit of comedy that can arrive when he's killed Polonius and then he's doing away with the body. Mm-hmm. But I think at that point something has shifted so dramatically in that scene where he has killed this man. He killed the father of the woman he loves, and also killed to a certain extent an innocent on some level. That it is the real beginning of Hamlet's erosion into the monster, and he becomes the monster to kill the monster. He knows he has to do it. He has to kill love, and that's the beginning of it. In fact, it's probably the most fatal blow. He kills Polonius, and that leads to Ophelia's downfall. And killing Ophelia is killing love. And if you kill love, you can do anything in this world. Hamlet knows that. That's what again, talking what he originally said, this is a play about grief. It's probably the finest treatise on grief and death that has ever been written, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so Hamlet he's mourning his own death, and he's also mourning the death of love. And so the kind of callousness that appears after that scene where he's dragging off the body, and sometimes Hamlet's got to laugh, and that's fine. but I was not interested in mining that, because I feel actually what's happening is his heart is going, it's dying.
Mm-hmm.
So the killing of Polonius is it explodes his heart and ultimately starts to kill his heart.
Amaka, did your preparation have you circling around these same questions?
That was beautifully said, Jonathan. And this is an amazing question. I think there's something in it, linking to how Polonius reacts to the player king, or the first player. Sorry, he's not playing the king yet, but he does that speech, Aeneas' tale to Dido.
Yeah.
And Polonius is affected by the change in the player. I think there's something there where Hamlet sees that Polonius gets it. You know, he's in terms of assessing people's hearts and people's motives. Even though, you know, he's in Polonius's charge, I think he can tell that his intentions are pure. You know, Polonius is convinced that Hamlet is mad because he loves Ophelia. So his heart is open, his conscience is clear. And I don't know if Hamlet can necessarily sense that, but anyway, I think he takes, I don't want to say pity, but he sides with him. He says, okay, you know, so we're on the same team. Take care of the players, and by the way, players, take care of Polonius. He'll be good to you. Don't take advantage of his kindness. Yeah, certainly killing Polonius is a major turning point, and yeah, I think it shifts the axis on which the world revolves entirely. Like it's such a wrought like experience, I think, and so far he's been grappling with all of these emotions, the grief and the rage and his mind kind of turning on him. And I think him being in his mother's presence, for one, and then, like Jonathan has mentioned, the depth of the connection that he's had to Polonius, at least in our production, they had known each other since Hamlet was born. I think is like kind of grieving another dad, you know, or an uncle, and the wrong guy too.
And you know what, in a way, I always thought that because Polonius represents a mother and a father figure to Ophelia and to Laertes, and his truth is, to thine own self be true, that speech, that's his truth. And it's kind of heartbreaking when he has to play the other role with Claudius and things like that in order, essentially, for the benefit of his children, for that kind of thing. So I think that Hamlet is a sensitive enough soul to know that somehow. And so the killing of Polonius is killing something that's already broken, that's heartbroken, that is a mother-father figure. So that's a pretty heavy load for Hamlet to carry on from.
Yeah, that's really well said by everybody. And that I think just to kind of add one more thing to that too, that I mean, Hamlet, there's a father-in-law relationship, you know. Hamlet clearly on a very deep level actually loves Polonius. He's annoyed by him, you know, as we sometimes are with, you know, like with fathers and or fathers-in-law, that you get frustrated, but at the same time there's a vein of love because they are connected to your love and because they're a good person, you know. I mean, I think Polonius is such a fascinating, because sometimes he seems like a bit of a dodderer, and then other times he seems remarkably acute, and that's the beauty of Shakespeare too, that he can make those things live in a complete human being. And so sometimes Hamlet, and I think he's probably most annoyed by the fact that he is sworn and allied with this man who corrupts everything around him, you know, who has become Hamlet's arch enemy. So there are enormous forces, polarized forces at play as there are in everywhere, all over that play. The play uses antithesis in a way that, like Shakespeare always does, but it's an extraordinary thing. The many strings of antithesis that exist in Hamlet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And speaking just of that, we have Mark with a question. Mark is wondering about Hamlet and the relationship between indecision and action. He's wondering, does Hamlet's experience with this offer us any lessons today?
Yeah, I think even to tie what we were just talking about into this, like Hamlet had been for so long, not doing the thing, like taking revenge. The thing he had been doing was gathering evidence, he's testing. He wanted to be sure. He wanted to have concrete proof of what the ghost had told him. So yeah, it looks like indecision on the outside, the contemplating, the experimenting, the questioning, the uncertainty. But I mean, I feel like that's the stuff that life is made of, and every once in a while, sure, go with your gut, but especially when it comes to people's lives, take a second, like think about it, like halt, pause, breathe, zoom out, zoom in, check, double check, triple check as many times as you can. Because yeah, other people's vitality is not something to be taken lightly. You can't just off someone on a whim,
No, you can't.
At least you shouldn't. I mean, it's done for sure. And I mean, people talk about, should Hamlet be played by a woman? Is Hamlet like a feminine person because he doesn't, attack? He's not violent as a first response. And I don't know. I don't think all men are violent as first responses, but I think, I can't count that many wars that were started by women. So yeah, I think there are definitely lessons to be learned from.
Yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, I think Hamlet is the type of leader that we're looking for. I think his two things I would say that I feel strongly about Hamlet, and this is just the way I sort of approached it, but I do feel that sometimes his reputation can have been that he is a procrastinator, or that's a polite way of putting it, really, that he suffers from inaction, and also that he is sort of near suicidal, and kind of taunting and inviting death as a possible option to opt out of the challenges of his life. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. I think he is literally the embodiment. He, she, whoever plays this is the embodiment of life, the life force in every action he takes, and he takes a ton of action. One of those actions is to contemplate deeply whether the choice to take another man's life or to do something which brings about literally an upheaval in the kingdom, in the world of Denmark, to make that choice, whether it's the right choice or not. He must be convinced that the action is true, good, faithful, is the right thing to do. And he also knows somewhere that doing so will likely end his own life.
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny, also there's a struggle between the intellect, the soul, the heart, and the grief is what I always found kind of made that difficult to adjust, because intellectually you get it, one gets it.
Yeah.
But again, it's the intellect and the emotion. What do you do when you're grieving? You can figure it out. Okay, I should be okay, but I want to take my life. No, I can't do it. Anyway, it's a struggle between, what is that, and what is this?
Mhm.
And I always found that really, really an interesting thing to play, and a very difficult one to find a balance in.
Yeah.
I think
Who must you be? Who must you be to do what you must do?
Yeah. Sanjay, did you want to say something?
yeah, I just wanted to pipe in with like, I think these questions are brilliant, and they really underline the complexity, the beautiful complexity of the piece. And also part of the reason why for me the time or the timeline of the play is so elastic and fluid, because especially I think in a state of grief, time gets really funny. Time slows right down and it speeds up, and so you can argue that Hamlet is a character of action. You can also argue that Hamlet is a character of inaction. And in the revenge tragedy aspect of the piece, when it's okay, you killed my father, so prepare to die. It's never going to go at the speed that any particular audience member watches and goes, "Yeah, I would go faster," or I would take my time and think about it. That's the beautiful thing about the play, I think.
Yeah. And it's
But yeah,
interesting.
I was just going to say, ultimately, Hamlet shows that he is that if he has one of his tragic flaws, likely is that he is too composed of action, in that when he finally thinks he has conclusive proof that Claude, the play has revealed, the play within the play has revealed that this man has done the deed, then the acceleration of events is so quick that he ultimately kills an innocent person. And that's one of, and kills it like that. So I think there's something about, he probably even knows his own nature. He lives very presently. He has an extraordinarily sharp intellect, wit, heart, gut reaction to things. And so, and he's quick to move. So on some level, he's sort of forcing himself to keep asking the question and make sure that ghost that appeared was not a devil, was not a product of his imagination, was not something that stemmed from the deepest forms of grief and therefore borderline madness. Like he's still there's that as well. He has no idea. I mean, ghosts are not normal in his world. So
yeah, and it's fascinating to hear you talk about, sort of this reputation that Hamlet has with his relationship with death, his or her. I keep saying his, but we have our beautiful 2020. But if Hamlet is in a state that is so close to suicide, then what is the graveyard scene? And that is, something happens, something turns. He reckons with something and realizes something in that moment. I would say, I don't know if in your prep and in your performance you would agree, but the relationship with, I won't. This is what I become. Change, like with death, that relationship changes in that scene. Would you say?
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's fascinating that it's off camera, so to speak, but that, and Sanjay might want to speak to this too, that the death and the doing away and the reaction, even if there's a bit of a veiled reaction, maybe there's something deeper going on for Hamlet, but his response to his own part in the death of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern is a really fascinating change. That some part of him at this point has become seasoned in the necessities of this world. And so, by the time he gets to the grave, he's certainly contemplating the life journey and the brevity perhaps of that. But in a funny way, death no longer scares him.
Yeah.
But I think originally, and that's why I say the time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. I sort of always felt that in that moment, whether it's necessarily super consciously or whether he has an exactitude about it, but I feel like he sees his own death. I think he sees his own skull in that moment. He knows that the events that he has just witnessed from possibly the ghost of his father will ultimately lead to his own demise. And that is heartbreaking, because I don't think it's like when you hear of kids, or probably even more so teenagers, who are now tasting life and they get a fatal cancer diagnosis. And suddenly you're forced to contemplate, wait a minute, I thought I was going to be here a lot longer. I thought I was going to do some pretty special things. So I feel like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. for all of the actors, how do we, oh no, I don't know who this question's from, but how did the actual filming impact your performance? And can you speak at all to your memories of the filming of the production? So any specific memories from that performance?
I remember we had to redo the ghost stuff because there was something weird about the sound, which was it's always interesting to go back and, because it's a play, we do it over and over again, but in film, it's a different feeling. And there's Johnny and myself having to do some, again, ghost and his son acting. That was an interesting way of doing it. I didn't find the filming was too intrusive. For the show, John and Sanjay, how did you guys feel? So Amaka, probably, have you ever filmed anything on stage, Amaka? No?
That's a thinking pose.
Yes, but not to the extent, not with all the nuts and bolts that y'all have over here.
Okay, so it can be intrusive, is what I was going to say. But
Yeah.
I didn't find this particular one too intrusive, guys.
You remember it, Sanjay?
I don't think so. I mean, I remember because you do shoot it once, like in show form and the cameras are sort of further away, and it sort of, I think for the most part, felt like another show to me. And when you go in to shoot in the evening, and it was a little bit of an adjustment, but I don't think it really affected the choices, performances, or anything like that.
That's one thing we're encouraged to do, Beck, is to make sure that that the filming captures the play that we're doing. We're not going into some different mode to try to suit, fortunately, we're not doing handheld shots of ourselves, or we're not wearing GoPros. I think actually Johnny and Sanjay and I would have liked to have worn GoPros and just seen everybody's perspective. It's going to be fun. And
I think
I want a film of you with the GoPros on.
Yeah.
That's what I want to watch.
Cool.
I think that we will be doing that.
I think the players would have really enjoyed us wearing GoPros.
Yeah, it'd be
I
good.
mean, I have sort of, of course, without question, ultimately love that things are being captured and preserved. But film and theater, I think, are, of course, they are deep cousins in the craft of performance. But I think there's some stark differences in those things. Film, for all of its beauty and its possibility to storytell and to manipulate the story, and I mean that in a good way. I mean, it's the art of manipulation of acting craft and storytelling. Whereas theater, for me, is just a much rawer form of what it is to be present in the moment. That's the advantage that theater will always have over any captured form, is that it is quintessentially, essentially live. And so I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with any of these captures, including, of course, Hamlet. And there was a part of me, I must probably confess, that I think when we started filming it, I was probably angry. I was a little bit like, but then you just forget it, and you just forget that the camera's there. Though I will say this, I feel like, we go back in the evening, we do a couple pickups, and I think we've probably filmed a few of the soliloquies, just to make sure they got a good, kind of, because they wanted to do some stuff with the camera moving around. And I felt, I wish I'd said it in the moment, but I felt, why don't we just do at least one run of these where we shoot them down the barrel, where I talk, meaning I speak right down the barrel of the camera? Because, I don't know, just because I feel like the soliloquies actually in Hamlet, and any Shakespeare plays, one of the extraordinary features of Shakespeare is that you can have these plays that are deeply human, deeply rooted, and yet suddenly there's a meta-theatrical moment where the character, and in our case, I spoke really directly to people's faces. Not, that doesn't have to be the choice, but I spoke to, like, the big head and the little head at the same time. And in Hamlet, the theater play, those monologues or those soliloquies bring us so much closer to an audience. But on film, I don't mean they do the opposite, but they don't do what they can do in the theater. And so I thought to myself, well, even if it doesn't ultimately work out, maybe we should try one where we just talk down the barrel and see if the effect of that is not dissimilar. I have no idea. It'd be a bit like what we're doing now, but
it would be an interesting experiment because one, it could bring you back to, oh, this is a film, because you have this larger than life face speaking to you.
Yeah.
And so you go, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. Or it can, I can't imagine being more enthralled than I was, but
yeah, so,
it could do that.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, I got to watch a tiny bit of the film. I was in transit on Thursday night, so I didn't get to see it then. But I watched a little bit yesterday, and it's not easy to watch yourself on film. But there are moments I'm like, oh, that looks fun, and there's other moments that you just go, oh God, But that's the nature of life for me anyway. Like, again, trying to commit yourself to the fact that it's an imperfect art form, and that hopefully it made sense in the context of the night, or if that moment didn't quite live, then there were many other moments that did live. So,
and also, Johnny, there's also the time that it was shot. 2015 is a different time from now. The one in 2008 was different. When I played it was 1990, 91, whatever. It just different things. And so our truth then is different from our truth now, or whatever. So that's also an interesting thing to capture that cinematically or on film, just for our story. What the story was at that time is a different story.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting when Gare said earlier, that's a choice I made, which I'd probably make a different choice now. I have a 1,000 of those, that I would go, or even just things I think back now. I'm like, why did I commit to sitting there? And I know I moved around a lot. I tried to not much to the consternation occasionally of the director, like I didn't try to glue myself to any movement. And Anthony was quite generous about allowing for that in my case. But at the same time, I still made choices that I think were just, just a little bit nonsensical or not motivated, so. But,
yeah, that's interesting. All right, we've got time for one final question that everyone's going to get to answer. So we're going to zoom out a little bit, and this is a question from Jeff to the actors. You have played many roles. Is there one that has affected you the most after playing them over the course of your career? And is there a role that stands out to you in terms of an impact? Any kind of impact, I would say. Emotional impact, stayed with you for the rest of your career, pieces of it, like it fueled you. One of those standout roles.
Well, I'll just say that Hamlet was one of them, because we were doing it for 5 months and we played 5 Hamlets on a weekend. So you do Friday night, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. By the time it got to Sunday night, you were crying because you didn't know how you'd do that journey again. So it was just a matter of not only physically and vocally and everything else, but it was emotionally how you would do it. So that's always a challenge. And I'll just say that probably my favorite thing I've ever done was Cyrano de Bergerac, because it is it's a celebration of flaws and love and humanity. And it's just, for me, it's another one of the greatest plays written. So that's all I got to say.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Hamlet, like, really, it wants you to crawl inside it while it's crawling inside you. And it's absolutely life-changing, I think. It's inviting me to be more reflective and introspective and curious and humorous, and to take time to pay attention to what's going on around me. He talks a lot. I don't love talking that much. So I did really enjoy this play called The Wolves that we did in the fall of 2018. What year is it? Yeah, fall of 2018.
Nicely.
And I played the goalie, and that character is silent almost throughout the action. And I loved that. I think that reflects like just my affinity for listening to other people, like watching life unfold. You know, there, especially now that there are so many voices and opinions, and there's so much expression being put out into the world. I really enjoy that space that character created for listening, to kind of in a different way than Hamlet, but to kind of be one with the audience, you know, watching sort of from the periphery, and still having a function inside of that, you know, keeping time, or or noticing what other people don't. Yeah. And that was a play all about young women, a young ladies soccer team. If you don't watch women's soccer, you should. And yeah, I just thought that was amazing to watch, you know, young people be listened to, women especially. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maka.
Thanks.
Got one, Sanjay, or?
Please.
Sure. In terms of, I don't know, impact on myself or impact on audiences, I'm unstable, so I hope this gets through. But major, like playing Orsino on the festival stage, playing any role that had a bit to say on the festival stage was an amazing experience. It's a place kind of like no other. So that, and Navarre Loves Labours, which I think is still streaming with Stratford right now, were two big ones. I think for impact in terms of on me as an artist as well as on audience, probably Helen's Necklace, which is a Canadian, a Carol Frechette play, sort of about a woman of some degree of privilege going through a different culture and getting a chance to play everybody else in the play was a really great acting challenge, and some of the feedback from especially younger audiences, a couple of experiences were just life-changing in terms of watching them discuss what they just saw and getting a sense of what theater can do in terms of an impact in an afternoon on an audience. And getting to play the Prime Minister of Canada, Joe Clark, in 1979 by Michael Healy, which was, I never thought I would ever get to play somebody like that. So,
wow.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Sanjay.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, I mean, man, there are so many roles that you're impacted by. It can be, you know, your relationship with a role can be such a profound thing. Three things come to mind, and I'll just touch really quickly on them. The first was like quite early in my journey at Stratford, I played Pericles, and I know Gareth's played Pericles, and Pericles is, you know, a far less perfect play than maybe some of the later plays.
Beautiful.
Actually, it is a much later play, but it's Shakespeare doing something different. But there is something, I don't know if you agree, Gareth, that, you know, Pericles, the journey he goes on is
Huge.
So huge and mystical and magical that it forced the heart to do this, you know. So forcing that early on in my time at Stratford was ultimately a gift. Terrifying, but, you know, and it was on the festival stage, so in some ways you just kind of, you get into the big O there and you do that. A little later on in Toronto, about 8 years later, I was in a production called Whistle in the Dark. It was the inaugural production of the company theater, with whom I have a long association now. But working with this guy named Jason Byrne on that play in a very kind of Hamlet role. He's the eldest brother of a family of very rough brothers, and he's trying to save the youngest brother from a life of violence, and ultimately succumbs to it. So it's quite Hamlet-like. And just the way we worked on that play, the desire by the director to get comfortable with sitting in the most uncomfortable places and to just live on stage has been the most impactful thing for me as a theater artist, period. Every day in rehearsal was, I felt like I was learning things about this thing we do like I never had. and then come to Hamlet another 8 years after that. And I feel like the prep of just those things alone kind of at least gave me a chance to play the Dane. And of course, Hamlet, yeah, as we sort of mentioned, is like the experience that you are invited to play on nightly on stage is so vast, so extreme in the dilemma that he is trying to work out. The life, the breadth of experience of life that is asked of the actor in that role is both the greatest gift and sort of your greatest terror. So.
And of course, they give you a sword fight at the end of the show.
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Why, Bill? Bill,
I
why?
know. I was thinking of you while I was watching that. Holy smokes. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much to this troupe. You arrived, you answered questions, the film is up and running. And when the troupe of players arrive in Elsinore, Hamlet finds his paradoxical way of getting at the truth. He uses the illusion of theater to get at the truth, and he says it's theater's business, he claims, to hold
them as to were
the glass up the mirror.
Hang on, yes.
Not to.
Never give Gara prop.
A huge thanks to the actors for being here, all of the magical magicians getting questions to us, and a big thanks to our festival community as well. This is a wild time of challenge and change, and I wouldn't be here without the support of ACT, a coming together, the hungry for change heroes at the festival, and for those of you in our community who are in support of the big changes that we're trying to make. I have Twitter now, and that's because of you. Thank you so much, and enjoy Hamlet.
Bye.
No. Mwah.